I've heard you mention and discuss occasionally the estuary, but I never looked it up. So tell me about that. What is that?
You, I have for almost 25 years been the minister of a little church on a seedy little corner in not the most important city in America, um, sharing my life and giving my life to a lot of older people who never watch any of my videos, would have very little idea of a lot of what we spoke about in this conversation. Never think about Plato or Socrates or any of these things. And at the same time, have always wanted to have conversations like these. When Jordan Peterson came around, I made my first video. Suddenly, my buddy Rick stops in church the first Sunday after I make my video, gives me this poster, and says, "I've never been to church before in my life, but here I am." And for the next couple of years after church, I say, "Well, what'd you think of this, Rick?" He says, "I have no idea what's going on with you people." It's inconceivable what's going on here. But after a month or so of making videos, Rick is and some of my friends said, "Well, why don't you do a meetup?" And so Jordan Peterson meetup. I thought, nobody's going to come to this. Dozen people come. And what am I going to do with these people? I don't know. We're just going to sit down and talk. So we talked for about 2 hours, and then we keep talking. In fact, we talk so long that it's 1:30 in the morning and the church phone rings. And I thought, I know who that is. That's my wife. Who are these people you're with? So at that point, it was like, okay, I need to have an end time. So then we would do it the next month and we just have a conversation. We do it the next month. One of the things that I realized in how many years of church work is that very few people would imagine, just like that woman who knocked on the door here, I need some gas money, or I need some food, or I need $20 because I really need some beer, or, whatever they knock on my door for. Nobody would ever knock on the door and thinking, I'd really like to have a good conversation with someone about what's
Pastor. Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
And so I also noticed in running a lot of Bible studies in church that, just like you mentioned before, in terms of you're a little kid and you have a question and you got these, one baby goes to heaven and one baby goes to limbo. Say, well, what about that? And, don't ask questions like that in church. We have orthodoxy to maintain. Oh, okay. Well, I certainly don't want to mess up your orthodoxy. I didn't mean to do anything wrong. But I noticed that even in wonderful, well-meaning Bible studies, that people would not say what they really thought. And they'd certainly not tell their pastor, because they'd lose status in the community. Well, maybe they're no longer believing like the rest of us are supposed to. But the more I would talk to people privately, I realized that there's whole ranges of beliefs that people have and don't have that they won't fess up to. Not to mention the other stuff going on in their lives that they know they shouldn't be doing that is really going on. And on one hand, in a community like that, you sort of need those kinds of tensions and boundaries and expectations. I get all that. But without a space in which to process and explore, people just sort of hold their breath for as long as they can and then get out the door and, now I can go do whatever I think I should do, whether it means I don't believe in Jesus, or I want to, leave my wife, or I want to go say Socrates is great and Jesus is meh. I mean, you can't say that in church. So I got the idea of having a space outside of church, but it's often inside the building of church because that's the space I got, where people can talk and they can say what they think, and we can listen to each other. And we have this little protocol that tries to help keep the small group dynamics good, so nobody hogs the conversation and you don't wind up spending 2 hours talking about what nobody else in the group wants to listen to or any of that kind of stuff. So we have a few little rules about that, but basically the purpose of it is, let's have a space where people can talk and tell their truth and form a community together somewhat. And I think actually it doesn't have to be in a church or connected to a church, but in my opinion, churches need this, because right now by virtue of everything that's gone on in the culture and also the internet and everything, there's a lot of people who are just sort of wandering out of church. And as a pastor, the pastor's often the last to know. And as a pastor, it's kind of like, I wish you'd come and talk to me, because I'm not necessarily hurt that you're leaving the church. I'm more hurt that you didn't feel you had anyone that you could talk to about these things. And I wind up being the pastor for lots of people who will never go to church. Just happens that way in a neighborhood. And that's, I'm fine with that. Even if I'd love for them to come to church, I will love them and listen to them, and I will be their pastor and I'll be their friend, even if they never come to church. It's totally cool. I get that. But what estuary is supposed to do is to say, here's a space. Nobody's going to try to evangelize you. Nobody's going to ask you for money. Nobody's going to lean on you and try and make you believe something that you don't believe. But why don't you tell us what you really think, and be willing to listen to what other people really think? In some ways, it's exactly what we've done just in this little conversation, but with maybe a group of 4, 6, or 8 people. And then you do it with some regularity, because, after we know each other's stories a little bit, now the next time we come to the conversation, we don't start from zero.
You've got some friendship, you've got some mutual understanding, there's trust growing. It's a reciprocal opening, as John might call it.
Exactly.
Well, that's awesome. So you've been doing that for a long time?
No, so the group here said, this is great, we ought to share it with people. And so we've been sort of trying to help other groups start. There's a friend of mine who was very much on the ground floor of this. He sort of runs a training thing that has about 50 people. And the training thing is just doing it. It's not unlike yoga, and it's just doing it together with some repetition. But then their job is to, start their own groups. And so we've got that going. So
It's kind of like a movement, like a pyramid. It's spreading out.
yeah,
That's good. So you do it physically, not online?
the goal is for people to do it physically. Sometimes, especially during COVID, some groups moved online. We're going to continue. We're still exploring the online physical thing. The priority, though, should be the physical, because when things happen in the physical space, they're much richer, more enduring, they're more real.
And then people are living in the same community too,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah,
it's anonymity online, people
yeah.
from everywhere.
And
That's
and so, my group has a lot of atheists, ironically enough. But yeah, we can help each other when there's someone has a crisis. They've got a pastor if they want one.
that's great. What a great idea.
So yeah, that's estuary.